All right, we got a Fox News alert right now. You're not going to believe the series of events. First, Russian aggression on the rise. You got a spy ship. It launched just off the U.S. coast, about 70 miles, right near Delaware. As a missile cruise is also a cruise missile is also secretly deployed, which is in violation of another agreement. That's a Cold War era arms control treaty with a nuclear warhead.
This is Russia's first provocation since the president took office. So how worried should we be?
Kurt Lippold was the U.S. Navy commanding officer of the USS Cole, and he joins us right now from our nation's capital. Good morning, Commander.
Good morning. Glad to be on.
Commander, let's also add this. They just buzzed our destroyer again with one of their fighter jets. What do you do from here? Number one, if you were the commanding of that destroyer, what would you do?
Well, I think what we're seeing is the Trump administration is being quietly challenged, in many cases not so quietly, by the Russians, and learning that they are not quite the allies that they thought they were. You now have very strong signals being sent. The deployment of the intelligence ship, that is a ship that, unlike the Soviet AGIs that used to patrol off our coast, this one is now specifically designed to collect intelligence. It's coming here to send a signal that, hey, we can forward deploy. The missile deployment is of great concern, not only to the United States, but especially NATO and Europe, because they're the ones that live with the employment of that first and foremost. And when you look at all the other things they're doing, they're stirring up trouble.
Sure. All right, Commander, how should the president respond to this? What does he need to do?
First thing I think he does is the deployment of the missile is an operational matter. We go to the Russians. We call them out by the treaty. We tell them they're in violation. We do it in coordination with our NATO allies, and then we work with them to develop a response so that NATO and the United States, there is no daylight between us, and that we, in fact, show that it's going to be a solid front, and we begin to hold them accountable.
Well, that would be, refreshing, given the fact that during the last administration, we didn't really stand up to Russia so much, did we?
Well, I think that there was a lot of concern about the ramifications. We weren't doing the groundwork necessary with some places like NATO to make sure that they were foursquare, solid behind us and us behind them.
Right.
We need to make sure that we do that in the future, because this is going to be a very dangerous deployment. We do not want to have a violation of a treaty, because that's a whole new ballgame now.
Keep in mind, Commander, as you know, we've been tested by North Korea with 2 missile launches, by Iran with 2 missile launches, and now rocket launches, and now we're seeing this with Russia, who we're evidently in bed with, which obviously that's foolhardy. But over the weekend, I was stunned to hear the Ukrainian ambassador say, when Nikki Haley, the new UN ambassador, came out and condemned their aggression in the Ukraine, the face on the Russian ambassador was relatively stunned. They weren't expecting that. Are they beginning to understand on some level, or are they going to be forced to understand that there's a new sheriff in town?
And I don't think we should push and say necessarily a new sheriff, but we should definitely make clear that the United States, acting consistently, is not going to continue to tolerate these Russian aggressions. They've invaded Georgia. They have invaded Ukraine. We need to make sure that we start looking at things, at how we can give things to the Ukrainians so they can begin to fight back against these separatists, so that we can create a country.
Well, if Donald Trump does fight back, how is that not a new sheriff in town? You're talking about consistency. He'd be totally different than what President Obama did and how he reacted.
Well, that's a failure of the previous administration. This administration is setting a new tone and a new way of doing business. We need to start getting Congress off top dead center, get the government filled with the appointees that the Trump administration needs in order to conduct operations and make policy worldwide. And right now, with the Democrats slow rolling this, they are actually undermining our national security by not allowing them to get confirmed.
At least 5 times that we know of, there's video that exists of the Russians buzzing our ships. Can you guys start locking in on them? Let them understand that we could take you out in a second. There's got to be something we can do quickly, or this is only going to get worse. What are our options?
First thing we do is there's an agreement called the Incidents at Sea Agreement. We tell the Russians, once again, lay it on the table so that we are documented and have it out there that they are violating that agreement in how they're approaching our ships. Trust me, Brian, we know when those planes are taking off who they're communicating with, how they're being controlled, whether they're armed or not, how close they're going to come. We have them essentially, like you said, locked and loaded. We're there. We're ready. If they provide any instance of a hostile intent or a hostile act, Trust me, I have every confidence that the Navy has empowered those commanders to defend their ships and their sailors, and they'll shoot them down.
Well, Putin has spoken. Now let's see how President Trump responds. Commander, thank you very much for joining us live today from Washington, D.C.
Thank you. Great to be on the show again.
Good to have you.
You made a good point about these cabinet picks. Got to get them through because it's affecting our national security.
Madison, the vice president, meeting with NATO today.
All right.
They'll be over there today.